Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Hello, friends. I'm Taya.
And I'm Sammy.
And we're the hosts of the Offbeat Worm podcast.
Come check us out. We talk about so many things.
Spooky things, silly things, and everything in between. Find our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more.
And we'll catch you on the Offbeat.
See you soon.
Hey, Twisted listeners. I'm Cindy.
And I'm Diva.
And this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder
and lists.
And we're brought to you by the Podmoth Podcasting Network. They're amazing. Check out all the other podcasts. We're proud to be a part of them. I don't know. What do we have to say?
Happy Halloween. I don't know.
Yeah, happy Halloween. We've got another Halloween topic. Happy fall. Mm-hmm. We have another Halloween-y topic. Today we are doing horror or movies, because the one I did isn't really horror, I wouldn't say, but like movies inspired by real life murders.
Yeah, I mean, anything with murders in it can kind of be de facto a horror movie, I think.
Well, yes, yeah.
Horror movie, thriller, drama. Yeah, and this is a topic near and dear to my heart because I watch, it's like 75% of the movies I watch all year round are horror movies. And we watch a lot of them. And I've seen, I think, almost every single one on Earth ever.
Nice.
And from like September through October, obviously, I'm watching 100% horror movies. Like if a new movie comes out that is not horror, we're like, we'll see it in November.
That's so funny.
Yeah. We can't break this streak.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's weird. Rory doesn't like horror movies, I've realized, because I used to watch them a lot more.
Yeah, that makes sense. He doesn't like crime either as much, so.
No, he's not that kind of guy, so what are you going to do?
It's like the one thing that he and my husband don't have in common.
I know, it's weird. That is like
weird.
where
they diverge.
Yeah, diverge. Yeah, they go different separate ways. Anyway, well, I do like horror. I'm more of like a jump scare kind of person. Like I like the movies.
Also, it's really fucking funny when Cindy's jump scared because you like jump like 5 feet in the air. So when we were in college, I would try to find really scary movies to show you to watch you be scared and laugh.
I know. I love being scared, but I get scared really easy and I get really scared. So it's fun for everyone around me, unless they like want silence during a movie, and then just don't. Like I'm not the person for you. But if you have a sense of humor and enjoy watching me be tormented, then you're gonna love watching these movies with me. So, as Diva did, we just put Ed Kemper up on our Patreon. Thanks to our new patrons, we love you guys. If you'd like to join us, it's patreon.com/twistedlisters. If you'd like to check out our TikTok, the last video I did was so good and it got like 1,400 views and I'm like, fuck TikTok, but we're on there. It's just at Twisted Listers. If you'd like to join us on Instagram, you can do that at
Twisted Listers PCast.
If you'd like to check out our website, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod.com.
And if you'd like to send us an email with case suggestions, which we are running through, and send us more if you want,
twistedlisterspod@gmail.com.
Amazing. All right. So I chose this topic, so this is all you to start.
I'm very excited. There's a lot of material for this list too. I want to say that we definitely covered quite a few over the years. So
yeah, well, the one I did last week was actually the inspiration for Jennifer's Body.
Which I then went and promptly watched because I hadn't seen it. And again, I haven't seen a horror movie that's very distressing to me. So I rectified it and I watched it.
What did you think?
It was great. It was fantastic.
It's a really good movie, right?
Yeah, I love that it's directed by a female director too, because that kind of like changes how you think about it.
Yeah.
It's very well done.
I thought so too. I agree. All right. So who are you doing?
I'm doing Henry Lee Lucas.
Oh my God. Just jumping right the fuck in.
Yeah. It's a big, chunky amount of notes I have here. So apologies. Although I know several people like repeatedly said like, don't apologize for, talking too long.
Oh, I know. We're always like, we're so sorry. And they're like, hi, that's why you're here. But like, I know what you mean. I'm always like, oh God, this is so wordy. It's so much. But like, yeah.
I mean,
get
it's Henry Lee Lucas. He's a wordy guy.
Yeah, he is.
And this, of course, goes with, I wanted to do it especially because I had just rewatched, like annually, I think, one of my favorite horror movies, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer from 1986.
Nice.
I'll kind of loop back to the movie and compare and contrast. And it's going to be very interesting because they have very little to do with each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Wait, who's the actor in the movie?
Michael Rooker.
Yes, it is Michael Rooker. Man, he's had
Yeah.
a long career.
He is incredible in that movie. I'm not sure if that like counts as his like breakout or whatever, but like because it's kind of an underground weird movie.
Yeah.
But to me, it is. He's incredible.
Yeah, for me, Michael Rooker came into my life with Mallrats because he's the dad in that.
Okay.
So, yeah, but anyway,
Yeah.
he's fantastic. I'm glad he's kind of become famous now that he was like the kind of the hero, in the Marvel movies. So yeah. Anyway, all right.
So let's get into real Henry. Henry was born August 23rd, 1936, making him a Virgo. Correct.
Ooh, all right. So isn't that the second most popular serial killer?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in Blacksburg, Virginia. His mom was purportedly a sex worker, and according to Henry, she would make him watch her have sex with her clients and would force him to wear girls' clothes. And according to him, she would also sex traffic him out to her clients.
Oof.
And just take everything that is according to Henry with a big fat grain of salt, though.
Yes.
Because we can't trust literally anything he says.
I mean, at least half of it's been proven to be lies, right?
More than half. Yeah, he's a big fat liar. However, his mom may have sucked at least somewhat because the dressing in girls' clothes was a problem at school and the school had to intervene to stop it. And so there's a little bit of truth.
So that's a verifiable.
Yes.
That actually happened.
Outside people saw that. Yeah.
Okay.
So she was not cool, at least in that capacity. A little notes of Ed Kemper there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. At age 10, Henry got in a fight with his brother, which somehow resulted in an eye infection. Henry having an eye infection, this would lead to him losing his left eye.
Yeah, which is why he looks so interesting in all of his photos.
Which is why he looks like that, yes.
Yeah.
So when he was 13, his dad died of hypothermia after drunkenly collapsing outside in the snow.
Oh, wow.
Henry dropped out of school around this time. It's all downhill. Pretty much from when Henry's born, it's all downhill. Honestly.
Yeah, it starts on a downward slope.
Yeah. He will later say that in 1951, so he would have been like 14, 15, he killed a 17-year-old girl. But he also takes his confession back later. So again, that's probably bullshit.
Yeah.
In 1954, at age 18, he does get charged with a ton of burglaries, for which he gets 4 years in prison. We're going to be in and out of prison a lot.
Yeah.
He briefly escapes from prison in 1957, but they catch him and bring him back.
Which, like, buddy, you're doing 4 years. You're almost
4
done.
years.
Just wait it out. You've got a year to go.
3 years into a 4-year sentence, he escapes.
At that point, yeah. Just let it go.
While he's in prison, he acquires a fiance through pen pal romance writing.
Oh, goodness. They've been around for a long time, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Those ladies.
Well, he's not a serial killer yet. So, I mean, he had just done burglaries, to be fair.
But still, what kind of person is like, oh, that guy that's like in prison, I want to marry, that I've never met? Like,
right.
Married. Like, that's
it's a choice.
Yeah. That's for sure.
After Henry gets out of prison in 1959, he goes to stay with his half sister in Michigan. And during a Lucas family Christmas, which can you imagine that? Like, dinner, Henry's mom says, "Hey, Henry, your fiance fucking sucks, and I'm old and sick, so you should come back home to take care of me." And this is what they argue over, supposedly, or at least what they start arguing over. But they keep arguing for weeks. Like Henry and his mom are just not having it with each other.
Arguing about like, "Hey, leave your fiance and come take care of me," and him being like, "No, I'm a grown man and I don't want to."
Yeah.
I feel like that should be the end of it.
Yeah, but I guess they continued to argue.
Okay.
January 1960, after a couple of weeks of post-Christmas battling here, Henry kills his mom. He is age 24, and he hits her with a broom and then proceeds to stab her in the neck.
I was going to say, if he hit her with a broom and killed her, that's a fucking hell of a broom.
That was, I just buried the lead. That was the precursor to the
Oh,
next
okay.
stabbing. Yeah.
The next stabbing. Okay. Wow.
actually did
So
it, yeah.
instead of just being like, no, I'm not going to move in with you, he's like, let me stab you to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild. That's a lot.
His sister finds her mom still alive but dying, covered in blood, and she actually heartbreakingly died of a heart attack from the attack, not the stab wounds.
Oh, wow.
Henry pathetically tries to say it was self-defense, from his like elderly mom. And he gives the story that he was slapping her, and then he looked down and saw the knife and was like, what? And he didn't realize he had the knife. None of these stories work out. He was found guilty of second-degree murder, and he got a sentence of 40 years to life in prison.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty serious.
1970, 10 years later, he's let out.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's good.
Because the prison was overcrowded, so they're just like, da. But like non-violent drug offenders, probably like you should stay. But like
that's
Henry,
what I was gonna say.
You should go. Yeah.
They're like, we have a lot of like not white, non-violent offenders, so let's keep them in and let all the
Henry, you can go
out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oy.
Pretty much right away, Henry tries to kidnap 3 little girls.
Oh my goodness.
And thankfully fails. But they presumably they go tell people this fucking guy tried to kidnap us, and he gets a 5-year sentence for this.
Okay.
So he's right back to prison, where he also gets another prison pen pal girlfriend.
But also, like, why is a guy who killed his mother, who's kidnapping children, only getting 5 years? The fuck?
But again, if you have some weed, oh no.
Yeah, forever and ever, like making license plates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's right back to jail, corresponding with his girlfriend.
Right.
He serves the full sentence this time, no escaping.
Okay.
And in 1975, he gets out. He marries his prison pen pal girlfriend.
So he's almost like 40 at this point, right? Yeah, prison pen pal girlfriend. So I think he's almost 40. Okay.
Yeah, about. He gets married, and he immediately proceeds to start sexually abusing her young daughter.
Oh, lovely.
So she bails, and that collapses about 2 years after it starts.
She did. Oh, that's good though. That at least, because honestly, like, again,
no, it doesn't work out. She's not about it.
Okay, that's great.
Then after that, he's pretty much full-time drifting from here on out. He's known as the Drifter Killer because he was a drifter, meaning he was itinerant and did not have a permanent like mailing address, right?
Right.
He was staying with random people and odd family members here and there, but kind of eventually quasi-settles in Jacksonville, Florida, where he moves in with his family of his new best friend forever, Mr. Otis Toole.
Yes, Otis.
Yes. They are BFFs. They are also on again, off again. I wouldn't say boyfriends. Yeah, boyfriends, but just sort of like friends with benefits, we'll say.
Yeah.
It's never that like official,
right.
But Otis is his literal BFF, and they're both equally scumbag pieces of shit too.
Yes.
So that's kind of like a scumbag piece of shit, like best friend forever, like soulmate.
Yeah.
You may remember Otis Toole from when we just not that long ago covered Adam Walsh, because he is potentially Adam Walsh's killer, although that is like slightly disputed by some.
I still think I think he did it.
Yeah, I agree. He was seen at the mall, so
he was. Yeah.
So there at the family Toole house, he meets Otis's niece Becky Powell, who was 15 and intellectually disabled.
Oh God.
Very vulnerable person. In 1982, Becky's put into a shelter because her mom and grandma died, so she had literally no one to take care of her, and she's underage.
Right.
And so Henry uses this very sad situation to get Becky to run away with him.
Oh God.
And drift with him,
right,
as it were. They eventually make their way, Henry and Becky, to California, where they briefly work for an ill and elderly woman, 82-year-old Kate Rich. She kicks them out after discovering that they were writing checks in her name.
Oh my goodness.
So that doesn't last very long because they're kind of not doing any work and they're just swindling her.
Right. So that's good though. She caught on. I think a lot of elderly people wouldn't necessarily know that. So that's good. She fucking figured. Feels like a lot of people are figuring him out, which is good. Surprising, but good.
Yes. Yeah, nothing lasts that long. He's not that good a con man.
Yeah, he's too dumb.
They then briefly stay, Henry and Becky, at a Christian cult in Texas called the House of Prayer. So they live on their commune. And from there, Becky disappears. No more Becky.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Henry initially claims that he left her at a random truck stop. Like, yeah, she just wanted to leave, so I just dropped her off middle of nowhere, casual.
That makes sense. That's exactly like what people would probably do. If they're like, I want to go back home, I don't want to be with you anymore. Can you just drop me at a random truck stop?
Mhm.
Like, that's probably not right.
No. Yeah, and I feel like we've heard that with like 4,000 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Last time I saw her, she was alive. So,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. So in 1983, he's arrested for illegally owning a firearm.
Okay.
And while he's there, I think probably unnecessarily, but I'm glad he did, he starts confessing to the murders of both Becky and Kate Rich, the landlord.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Wait, the old lady? Or no?
Yes.
The old
Yes.
lady. So he did kill her after she kicked him out.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fucked up. That's fucked up.
In short, he confessed that he stabbed his young girlfriend to death
Oh, shit.
and dismembered her corpse
Oh, God. Okay.
and disposed of the parts
Mhm,
before, continuing on his drifting ways.
mhm.
And Henry also claims that he took Kate out for a drive, quote unquote, basically to kill her.
That's the old lady.
Yeah, the old lady.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if he stabbed her, or I didn't get that down, but needless to say, her remains were in part found in his wood burning stove where he was staying.
Ooh, wow.
So-
Okay, so that one we know he did.
Yeah.
That's not
for
like a question.
Becky and Kate Rich and his mom are, spoiler alert, those are the three concrete murders that we know
only
he
three.
did. It's not ambiguous at all.
Oh,
Yes,
wow,
but those are
okay.
the only
The
three.
only three.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay.
So what's the next chapter here? Henry, and what's weird too is Henry's actually kind of a mundane murderer when you think about it, because those are three people he knows, right? He's not killing at random. He's not abducting women off the street.
Yeah.
Those are all women that he had a connection with.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's interesting because that ties into the one that I am doing today as well. And I always find it really weird when when murderers, like single murderers, kill people they know. That's almost always the case. Not almost
Yeah.
always, but quite often. When serial killers kill people they know, it's kind of weird. It's kind of not.
But the thing is, Henry's not really a serial killer because the definition of serial killer is killing people you don't know.
Is that really what it is?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's not quantity. It's the people you do not know. Killing people at random.
I thought it was
Or-
two or three, like three or more.
I
but
always
didn't
thought
know
the
association.
definition was in part strangers. Because if you're killing people you know, that's just like regular murders. That's not a
But
serial
not
killer.
if you're doing it not if you're killing a bunch of them. I'm gonna look it
Yeah.
up.
Okay.
A person who commits a series of murders, often with no apparent motive and typically following a characteristic, predictable behavior pattern.
Well, no motive is sort of like what I was trying to say, I think. Like,
Wow.
no motive implies because you don't know the people. Because ostensibly for a girlfriend or a mom, you'd have a motive, right?
It says often with no motive. It doesn't say that's
Okay.
like a make or break. So I
Got
don't
it.
know. Interesting to think about though. I always
Interesting.
thought it was like, enough people.
Quantity.
Yeah, I thought it was like a quantity, like a question of quantity and not necessarily any other factors.
Well, share your thoughts, Twisted listeners. What makes a
Yeah.
serial killer?
What classifies a serial killer? Tell us. Yeah.
But I think it's debatable with Henry. I'll say
Right,
that.
right.
For sure. He's not like Richard Ramirez going out just like stabbing, like woo woo woo,
Right.
So then, of course, the next part here is Henry starts confessing. This is the other big thing about Henry and why he's such a legendary figure in true crime is really because of this.
Mhm.
He ultimately confessed to 600 murders, and it will yeah. And at first, the press and people are like, "Wow, this guy killed that many people," but it will only come out over time. The vast majority / all of these are false confessions.
Right.
And he really wanted to paint himself as sort of I think it's Pee Wee Gaskins, the one who was a drifter serial killer, right?
Yes.
Who was
Yeah.
actually driving around killing at random. He wanted to seem like that was
Like
him.
that guy. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's a Netflix documentary called The Confession Killer, which is another name of his, and that kind of focuses on how police had to painstakingly investigate
Mhm.
all of these possible murders later on to prove they were false confessions, because there was a quote unquote Lucas task force that was formed. And this is
God.
going to anger you for sure.
Yeah.
Because the Lucas task force would just get the confession of Henry and pretty much clear it. They wouldn't do a lot of investigation to fact check.
Right. So they're just like,
So-
great, mark that one off. Got
Yes.
it. Like,
Yes, and they would clear 213 cases.
yeah, that's upsetting because those aren't
Yes.
actually cleared. And like,
Yes.
how fucking stupid are these people? Like, this is your one job and you can't even do it properly because you're
And-
fucking lazy and you just want to get the win.
Yeah, and first of all, that's like 213 or whatever offenders who are continuing to like murder, right?
Yeah.
And for the families, it's a false relief because they thought, oh, okay, this is like the answer. They thought things were resolved for them.
You finally
But they
know.
And they didn't realize that no police work had been done to confirm that Henry was the killer. So they all just thought, they assumed they had done their jobs, but they hadn't.
Yeah. No. That's fucking
And
garbage.
this blew my mind. I learned this week. The task force also later came under fire for giving Henry fat stacks of actual unsolved murder case files.
No. So
They
he could
literally-
just learn
Yes.
inside information to match it.
Yes, that's
What a
insane. I've never
fucking-
heard of that anywhere else. Like, that's insane. They're literally like, here's a menu. Which ones do you want to confess to? And he would literally just be like, oh yeah, so I did this, and he would just be reading like from the autopsy report, right?
Right. Oh my
So
god.
of course some of them would seem to match because they gave him all the info, you know.
God damn it.
And Henry would later claim that police tortured him and denied him bedding and like gave him all this rough treatment. And look, while cops do that, I really doubt they did this to Henry. This was not his motivation for confessing.
Yeah, no, I'm really pretty certain that's like not what happened because
No.
they obviously didn't have to. He was like super stoked to be doing this.
Yeah, here's the real motive, I think, that makes a lot of sense. Henry would actually earn really good treatment for confessing.
Yeah.
The task force would give him burgers and milkshakes. They would take him out to restaurants, and he would get wild privileges in jail he definitely should not have for like a murderer. They let him wander around unhandcuffed. He had security codes to get in and out of different like spaces.
So they basically were like, be our patsy and we'll fucking give
Yes.
you like a dream life. And he was like,
Anything you want.
sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
of course he kept confessing because he was allowed to be treated like a person and not like
Right.
a prisoner, you know?
Right.
And
Fucking
he was allowed
ridiculous.
all these perks. Like, fucking a lot of people in that situation would do the same. You
Yeah,
do
this is
anything
a
for
big
a fucking hamburger.
duh. Yeah.
Duh.
Oh, God.
So around 28 are purportedly corroborated at first. But then again, these are all eventually disproven. I won't get into each of them because it takes too long, but you can watch the
Right.
documentary. And a lot of the reason why some of them are disproven is geographical disparity. One journalist proved that who went about like disproving these proved that Henry Lee Lucas would have had to drive 11,000 miles in less than a month in 1978 in order to commit the crimes he said he did.
Yeah, so there's no fucking way. That's not a thing. That's not possible.
No, because
It
like
takes a
even with
long ass time to drive that far anyway. You have to just like murder, get in his
Yeah.
car and drive. Murder, get in his car and drive. And it's just like, no,
Yes.
that's not
and
happening.
even with his drifting, like the murders he was confessing to don't match up to the places he already was, right?
Right,
So he would have
right.
had to go driving way out of his way.
And also, did he even have a car? Like, do we even know? How reliable could
Yeah.
a drifter's car have been to make 11,000 miles in 30 days? Like,
Exactly.
that's not a thing.
That's
No.
crazy. Yeah. And presumably that's similar to like all the other months, you know? So like
Mhm.
that adds up to a lot of driving.
Yeah.
So I'll circle back to the end of Henry's tale here at the end. But that's his confession bullshit.
Mhm.
Briefly, I'm going to talk about the movie connection here. In 1986, which is very soon after the murders,
Yeah.
3 years after he was arrested for Becky and Kate Rich is when this movie was made, which like, hot damn. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer was made for a budget of $110,000. It was filmed the year before,
Oh,
so even
goodness.
faster, 2 years after. They had a lot of difficulty finding a distributor for it, unsurprisingly.
Yeah.
And right away, it's sort of this underground movie, and it was sort of love it or hate it because, like, it's very violent.
Yeah.
It was given an X rating by the MPAA, which is not, in my opinion, deserved. It's not that bad. But it was just a way to give it more attention, and people kind of like thought, "Ooh, you have to see this crazy, sneaker."
Also, like, I don't feel like I've ever heard of a movie being X-rated. Well, was it for sexual content or?
no,
That's the
definitely
weirdest
not.
thing. Like, I don't think I've ever heard of
Yeah.
one being rated X for violence, not for sex.
No, yeah, it's always for sex, yeah, because that's what we are more afraid of in America.
Yes.
So
Yes, big time.
Director John McNaughton said that I like this quote, that he didn't think he could afford to make a horror movie on his very small budget. But then when he saw in the news Henry's story, he was like, oh, that seems like a budget story. Like that seems cheap.
Low rent as fuck.
Yeah. Like, and you know, serial killing, that's cheaper than like monsters or aliens or anything, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just wanted to comment on the movie because it's interesting to think about how different it is than what really happened, like dramatically so.
Yeah.
It makes Henry out to be much more sympathetic than Otis. It definitely leaves out the part where the two of them are in a relationship. And in the movie, Henry kind of saves Becky in the end, who is supposed to be Otis's sister, not niece. And in the movie, Becky is an adult who comes to stay with Otis, and Henry kills Otis after he tries to rape Becky. So kind of a heroic thing. Obviously, Henry did not kill Otis.
Yeah, no, not even a little bit.
And they run away together after that in this sort of like fleeing, almost romantic thing. And in reality, it's like, no, he preyed on a disabled child, but okay.
Like, I wonder why they did that. Like, that makes me wonder about this director. And like,
yeah,
who wrote the story? I think, like, what's up, pedophiles?
I think he also just wanted to movie-fy it, and like pedophilia doesn't work on a movie, you know. Like he just wanted to movie-fy it.
No, I get it. I just feel like it's really strange to me to have, like, it's Henry, portrait of a serial killer, and then they want to try to make him like the hero of the story, the relatable character. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the fuck
I mean, this is not
on?
the only movie like this. I think of like Natural Born Killers, and I think of like there's lots of movies where the serial killers are like very much romanticized.
Well, there's like Ted Bundy movies that are
yeah,
that one with Zac Efron. I mean, I haven't watched it because no thank you, but like I've heard that it's
it's terrible.
Thing. Yeah, it's just like
it's terrible.
And I'm wondering what they're gonna do with that Dahmer. It's either a movie or a TV show coming out.
Oh God, yeah, that's a hard one to make sexy. Yeah. But they keep trying. They keep trying.
They do. They do.
Oh, anyway, but yeah, this is part of this tradition of romanticizing the killer for sure.
Yeah.
And Henry is absolutely like the kind of romantic rogue loner hero in this movie. And he's much better looking than real Henry.
Yes.
Obviously, young Michael Rooker. And the movie does end with Becky's murder. Sorry for the spoiler, but it's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
Because I just told you about it, but they don't show the murder. They just show him like dumping a suitcase ambiguously at the end. So to me, that also like helps the romanticization of him, because you don't see his like most gruesome crime.
Right.
There are a couple gruesome murder scenes with Henry and Otis murdering together, and like one iconic, really, I think the most disturbing scene in the movie has Henry and Otis like kind of assailing a couple, and like Otis is like ripping the woman's shirt open, right? And like attacking them, but like none of the really gruesome stuff in the movie resembles any of their known actual crimes. So
what
it's
actually
all
happened?
No, not at all. You know, so it's completely like poetic license. Yeah. And you know, again, I'm sure Henry actually loved this movie because it made him look good, and it made him do gruesome murders that he didn't even really do. So
so he got all the benefit of it, like all the good
and
stuff.
It made Otis look really bad. So it's like, I'm sure he loved it.
Right.
And I don't know if he got to see it, but if he did, he loved it. So finally, just to end our thing here, this is a fact that everyone needs to know. George W. Bush, as governor of Texas, commuted Henry's sentence to life in prison. And look, I am against the death penalty.
Yes.
But you have to look at this objectively as an insane choice of person to do this with. Like, when there's, you know, I'm sure 1,000 Black people who were present for an armed robbery, right?
Yeah.
That are like on death row in Texas. And he's like, no, this white serial killer, this is the one.
This is the guy that I'm going to not put to death because he's a white man.
I just always found that insane. Like, and also they're both like kind of dumb. They're both kind of like, I feel like they would hang out, you know, like George W. and Henry Lee.
Years ago, I posted that photo of George W. and then also Ted Bundy, and they look like they're like hanging out. They both look like scrubby 70s like carpenter dudes just like having a hangout.
I feel like they would hang out. And I mean, and George W. is a serial killer in a different way.
Yes, he is a mass murderer, serial killer. Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's just a fact there. And finally, in 2001, Henry died of quote unquote natural causes in prison at 64. And yeah, that's it. Fuck him. He is an asshole and a murderer, but not the elaborate Ted Bundy-esque figure that he wanted people to think.
No, he's just some fucking backwoods idiot who killed a few people because he has issues with like compulsive murder shit.
And women, clearly.
Women,
He didn't
it's
kill
all
any
women.
men.
I really wonder if he killed anybody else. I think
wonder.
Otis has more murders attributed to him that he probably actually did.
I think it's definitely possible Henry killed some more people, but not the full hundreds, obviously. But
no, because
it's possible.
If you look at it again, like you said, like these are all people he knew. So like, is he all? And there's definitely instances where people have also killed people they don't know, and you find out like later. But I don't know.
I mean, him trying to abduct those girls does though point to the fact that he would abduct strangers.
You're right.
Like,
yeah, it does. It does. I don't know, man. I'm on the fence about the whole thing.
Possible. Yeah, but it's also possible he literally just killed those 3 people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That's what I'm gonna go with. I don't know. Anyway, okay. Moving on to the one I did. Sorry if the recording quality isn't great today, you guys. My internet's being a fucking asshole, and so I'm back outside where there's planes, and I'm tired of having to stop every 10 seconds, so you might hear some background here and there. So I'm gonna do the Snowtown murders, otherwise known as the bodies in barrel murders. This took place in southern Australia near Adelaide between 1992 and 1999.
Which is a cursed town, Adelaide.
It is. It's fucking crazy.
Town.
I'll talk about it just a little tiny bit because what I want to give a disclaimer. This is an extremely convoluted case, and it's going to be impossible to cover everything in 20 minutes. So I apologize if it gets twisty and turny and weird. Basically, this all happened with a group of people who knew each other, centered around one man who is manipulating basically everybody in his neighborhood. He's a very charming man, but he's also a psychopath diagnosed. So I just kind of want to put this out there. Like, everybody involved is connected to everybody else, essentially.
Yeah, so it's a little complicated network.
Yes. It's like the Jennings 8, where like they all knew each other and they all knew all the people who know, and if somebody knows something and everybody knows something, but nobody's talking. It's a similar thing.
Okay.
So we're going to start the story with John Bunting. He was born in southern Australia and lived most of his life in either Adelaide or around the area. He was born without a sense of smell. So really fucking weird. That's actually, it is sad. And it's also quite dangerous. Not having a sense of smell can be really, really dangerous because you don't know like if food has gone bad or if there's a gas leak in your house. Or
that's true. I didn't think all the times you need to smell something.
Yeah. There's quite a few times that it can be problematic. So yeah, it's a serious disability actually. Yeah. So Adelaide, where he lived, was meant to be like this big booming industrial town, but it fell apart for whatever reason. So there's a ton of rundown housing, the working poor, there's like factories is basically all they can do. So yeah, lots and lots of crime, lots and lots of murder. So many of Australia's murders occurred in or around Adelaide because it's just a really, really rough area. Okay. Rough.
Okay.
So John's parents didn't have a lot of money, but he was the only child. So they did dote on him as best they could. As far as I could tell, he didn't have like a bad life. I think his parents were strict, but they loved him. So nothing obvious there with the upbringing, right? What did happen that I think sent him down the path we're going to discuss is that when he was 8 years old, he went over to a friend's house where the friend's older brother violently attacked both of them, tied them up, beat them, and sodomized them.
Oof.
John later said that his friend was like placid during the rape. He just kind of like, dealt with it because I think it was something that happened pretty regularly to him.
Oh, God.
But this really angered John. And I also think it's really sad to me that his 8-year-old friend like invited him over.
Yeah.
Kind of, that his older brother is like a giant piece of shit, like child rapist.
That's really sad.
So John was obviously very fucking pissed. After the brother assaulted them, he called his friends who came over and like beat them further. When John got home, his mother scolded him not only for being late, but for getting in fights because he was all bruised and bloodied. So he didn't tell her what happened. Obviously, he was ashamed. But on top of everything else, he gets home and he gets in trouble.
Yeah.
Shortly after this, the older brother died in a motorcycle accident, which I'm sure we're all super sad about. I hope it hurt. But
the child molester one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, good. I hope you got
I hope no one else
road
was hurt.
rash everywhere. Yeah. No, probably not. If it's a motorcycle, it's usually just that
Yeah.
person. So, from that day forward, John was changed. I think he definitely had some issues prior to this. He was like kind of a weird kid, but this was like what set him off. So growing up, obviously he had a deep, deep hatred for both pedophiles and gay men.
And probably conflating them a little bit.
He did. There was no distinction in his mind between the two. Even though, as I don't have to tell any of our listeners, the majority of the attacks against children are by men who identify as heterosexual. So,
yeah.
But important to say. Anyway, so he grew up with a severe hatred for these groups of people. And when he was still fairly young, he is acting out. I think he's like 15. He gets a girl pregnant. She gives birth to their daughter, and he just bails. And they move somewhere else. They move to a different area. He never sees either one of them again.
Probably for the best for them, actually.
Yeah, I think so. So, and I just wanted to mention this because he was a really charismatic guy, but he was obviously also like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
When he was 22, he worked at a slaughterhouse, and it's unclear if he actually slaughtered animals, but he bragged about it to people. He bragged about slaughtering them, how much he loved doing it. He would talk in detail about what he did. However,
I don't want to shame that job because it's a job and people need to work, but it's a job that you shouldn't like too much.
I actually had a friend growing up in Davis where I lived. He lived on a farm just outside of Davis, and they had a slaughterhouse. That's what their family did. And they did halal. So they'd have to have somebody come and bless the animals, and they had to butcher them in a very specific way. He didn't love it or hate it. He was just very matter of fact. I think when you grow up in that and that's just what you do.
Yeah, see, that's fine. I just feel like you shouldn't love it excessively.
Exactly. Agreed. Yeah. It was very like he knew that it was kind of a gnarly job, my friend.
Yeah.
And he was also kind of a weird dude, just to be honest. But he also was very matter of fact about it. It was a job. That's what it was.
Exactly. Yeah.
But again, there's no record of him actually doing any butchering, so he could have just been talking out of his ass,
Yeah.
So he's about 22 at this time. When he's around 25, he killed his first victim. This is a, quote, friend he knew from around town who he suspected of being a pedophile. His friend was just an openly gay man.
Okay.
So he invited this guy to his house, accused him, beat him to death with a shovel. He then buried this guy, whose name is Clinton Trezise, in a shallow grave, and he wasn't found until 2 years later in 1994. But they buried him far from where they lived, so it didn't get tracked back to him at the time. Even when the body was found, they had no leads, right? So a few years prior to this murder, I'm going to kind of jump back and forth in the timeline because I figured it was the best way to kind of get this together.
Sure.
So a few years prior to this, probably around the time he was 22, working at the abattoir, he met a woman, Veronica Tripp. They got married. She had a teen son, but he didn't move in with them. So she moved in with John and John's roommate, and the teen son, I don't know where he lived, maybe with his dad.
Because stay away.
Yeah. So these adults all lived at 203 Waterloo Corner Road in Salisbury, North Australia.
Okay.
This is where he lived when he killed Clinton. After killing Clinton, which he rationalized by saying he's a pedophile, when in fact, like I said, he was just an openly gay young man. After this, John didn't kill again for 3 years. He and Veronica seemed really happy. They settled into their life together. And this is where they met kind of this weird host of characters from the neighborhood, which again, it was not a rich neighborhood. It was not a good neighborhood. They were houses with trailers behind them and people living in the trailers and people living in the houses. And everybody's on, they're all pensioners is what they call it in Australia. So they're all on government funds, not a lot of work in the area. So it's just kind of everybody's hanging out, everybody's using drugs, everybody's being scummy in a way.
Okay. Flop
houses, yes. So, like I said, John met a bunch of the neighbors, became really good friends with two of them in particular, which is really interesting because his two closest friends were Robert Wagner and his boyfriend, Barry Lane, who later went by Vanessa Lane. But I have to say, it is unclear if she or he, if they were officially trans, or if they just did a gender bending kind of thing.
Okay.
So
gender fluidity.
Yes. I don't want to be disrespectful to this person, but there is literally no concrete information on how to refer to them.
How they identify
Yes,
anything.
none
Okay.
at all. And you have
Okay.
to remember this is the early 90s, so it's
Yeah.
really, really hard to know.
Okay.
So his first murder occurred in 1992, and Barry Lane, Robert Wagner, and a few other people helped dispose of that guy's body. They all went and like buried him in a shallow grave. Everybody knew about it. So now we have this like weird open secret in the neighborhood, but everybody's really happy because they're like, oh, they're a pedophile and a piece of shit. And Barry or Vanessa started to kind of change the way that they acted around John, because John was very open with everybody in the neighborhood that he hated pedophiles and he hated gay men and he hated anybody who was not like straight or what he considered like sexually deviant. Anybody that was that way, he hated them, right?
Yeah.
And yet these two gay men are his best friends. So it's this weird kind of situation.
It is weird.
Right?
Yeah.
I know that Robert, at one point, they broke up and Robert started dating a woman. And I think it was like to appease John.
Okay.
So, I think this is like a weird, like, power relationship between the two of them as well.
Yeah, like he's probably like a dick to him about him being gay, the same as purportedly being his friend, I would guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So John, on top of like having this chick, Veronica, that he's like, I think married to, he was also having relationships with like multiple other women in the area because he's just a scumbag. And one of these is is Susan Allen. And I don't know, there's no timeline as to like who he was banging when. I think it all overlapped.
Okay.
But he and Susan were close even after, they were all friends. They were like friends with benefits, basically. Her grandchildren, because she was like 40 and had grandchildren, which is fine. I'm just giving a timeline of like what's going on, because it's like, what, she has grandchildren, and then she's like, because John's what, like 26 at this point. So
yeah.
Her grandchildren once complained that this man, Ray Davies, who Susan also dated, made sexual advances toward them. So Susan and John dated, broke up. She started dating this guy, Ray. Her grandchildren were like, he made sexual advances towards us. Susan broke it off with Ray, but allowed him to live in the trailer behind her house. She was very upset about what happened, though. And at one point, knowing that John like hated pedophiles, she told John what happened. Right. So she thought that John might like beat him up or scare him or whatever. He killed him. He killed Ray.
Yeah.
So he and Robert Wagner attacked Ray. They called him a pedophile. It's possible at this time that his other side piece girlfriend, Elizabeth Harvey, also got involved and stabbed Ray in the leg as part of like his being murdered, but we don't know. So he and Robert shoved him into a car, beat him, took him somewhere. I'm not sure where they took him. They put him in a bathtub and they beat his genitals while proclaiming him a pedophile.
God.
He then tied a rope around his neck and tied that to a beam. So he was just on his tippy toes. And if he stopped standing on his tippy toes, he would choke to death. And then they crushed his toes with like pliers. They beat him. They shoved a rag in his mouth and then just sat there and waited. And they just waited for him to not be able to stand up anymore.
Oh my God.
And then he died of asphyxiation from hanging.
That's really torturous and horrifying.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah. This is one hell of a way to process your unhealed childhood trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really fucked up. So he was also buried in another shallow grave. This happened in 1995, and he wasn't found until 1999. His next victim, John's next victim, was probably Susan herself.
Okay.
So she was getting annoying. He was really into Elizabeth at this time. He and Elizabeth actually eventually married. So when, Susan became inconvenient, she disappeared.
Yeah. Okay. New lady in town.
Mm-hmm. So John was able to continue withdrawing money from her bank account and also cashing like her government checks for a long while, which he was also doing to Ray. So his thing was like killing these people, disappearing them. And then he kind of knew in these neighborhoods, like nobody was going to report anything. So he and his little group of people kept cashing their checks and making like a fuck ton of money. And at one point he had like $17,000 saved up in all of his victims' money and like moved into a nicer place. Right. So this is like pretty gnarly. Anyway, she wasn't reported for a long time, but when she did finally get reported, they were like, oh no, she just had a heart attack. This was after he got caught, but he was like, we didn't kill her. She had a heart attack, but we buried her to keep stealing her checks. So it's unclear if he actually murdered her or what. But there's no proof, but he definitely like hid her body and stole money, right?
I'm gonna go with he probably did.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, talking about Elizabeth here, his new lady, she has a son, Jamie Vlasakis, and another son by a different father named Troy.
Okay.
Now, again, we have a whole host of characters from the neighborhood. There's Frederick Brooks, there's Gavin Porter, there's Gary O'Dwyer, there's another Elizabeth Hayden, there's Mark Hayden. We'll kind of get into this, but this is the whole group of people, right? So his next victim is this girl, this trans woman, Michelle Gardner. She lived nearby, and Robert hated her because she was open with her sexuality, which I think he was really... instead of being mad at John for making him feel like he couldn't be openly gay, he got mad at this woman for being openly...
Right, which has happened a lot.
Yes. So they tortured her, stomped her genitals, beat her, hanged her. And they also made another man who I've just mentioned, Frederick Brooks, call Michelle's friend and ask for her wallet to be dropped off. Like, oh, this is Michelle. Like, I need my wallet. And her friend was like, you're not fucking Michelle. There's no way. But they kept calling, kept bothering them. And so she finally came and like dropped it off where they asked. That's like, drop it in this mailbox and we'll come pick it up. Like,
very Ingen Lake, they would do that.
Very much. Yeah. I believe this is the first body, Michelle, who was put inside a 5-gallon barrel after being dismembered. They then took her body in the barrel and put it in an abandoned bank in Snowtown, hence the name, the Snowtown murders. This bank was potentially rented by their friend Mark Hayden, who's married to Elizabeth Hayden, as a way of helping them dispose of the body. So once again, everybody knows what's going on. This is like a big open secret.
Okay.
The next victim was either Barry or Vanessa Lane. This was due to their flamboyant lifestyle. They had dialed it back quite a bit once they realized John was like scary and helped him dispose of bodies. But they were still openly kind of who they were, but they thought they were friends with John. However, they had a really big mouth and told people about the disposal of Clinton's body, including John's current girlfriend. So it was time for them to go. It was more torture in a bucket, into the bucket with acid to the bank vault.
I think also John and like, I don't know, I think all these guys just like torturing, murdering people, and that's besides the homophobia, they're also just trying to find any excuse.
Oh, we'll get there because yes, hard yes. So they kill this person, they put them in the bucket, and all the while, John is getting closer and closer to Jamie Vlasakis, and he's the only man in Jamie's life who seemed interested in being a father figure. Now, this is his now wife's son. And he was the only one who like gave a shit about him. He really brought him in at first, making him trust him, being like a father figure, caring about him. And Jamie started to be let in on these murders and start participating, but only after years of John indoctrinating him with like anti-gay and anti-pedophilia, like, bullshit. This includes a wall that John had in his house that he shared with Elizabeth and her children that was called the Rock Spider Wall. And this was a bunch of people that he knew that he would consider to be like dangerous pedophiles.
Yeah.
And this rock spider wall, I think that's like a slang term in Australia for like pedophiles, I think.
Okay.
Would change. He would like change who he put up on it, and he would make notes about them. And these were the people that eventually all basically disappeared. And Jamie, again, is getting closer to him. Jamie actually, his mother, Elizabeth, told John that a man that she had been dating prior to John sexually abused her children. And so John chased him out of the neighborhood. He didn't kill him, but he like put dead animal carcasses in his yard and did all this crazy shit. The dude escaped before getting murdered, but I'm pretty sure that's where it was going.
And like, I mean, I'm probably spoiling it something here, but like probably like a solid percentage of these people were not like, are being falsely accused as well.
Well,
like,
Clinton, his first victim was just gay.
No, I know, but I'm saying even the ones where someone's saying they were a molester, like, were they? Like,
right. Well, John says they all are. That's his thing. He was like, I want to kill this person, and therefore I'm going to make them this way. Right. I think not even at first did it start out legitimate. There were a few that maybe were legitimate, but really it was just an excuse.
Yeah.
So the ways that John made Jamie kind of like tested him was through violently murdering animals.
No.
Yes. Kangaroos, cats, dogs. I mean, I don't know if it was actually a kangaroo that was in the movie, which we'll talk about. I think
Okay.
they just eased us into the animal murders, but they would like, I'm sorry, Diva, I'm just going to tell you, they would
No.
skin them. And he was doing this because this kid was like a teenager and he wanted to like prove his loyalty to him, right?
Okay.
So, Jamie loved him, obviously, because he took care of the guy who abused them. So the train keeps rolling because, he took this 5-year murder break, but once he started again, he did not slow down. His next victim was Thomas Trevelyan, who had also helped dispose of Clinton's body because it was a fucking like disposal party. There were like 15 people getting rid of this body. It's like, how many people do you need? Anyway, he was a really weird dude. He had an obsession with the army. Like, he only wore fatigues. He had a lot of issues with paranoia. He'd randomly like run out of his house with a gun in his hand. And he told someone about the murder. So once again, there we go. He was forced to stand on a box with a noose around his neck. John then kicked the box out from under him. Once he was dead, he dismembered him and put him in a barrel. So it's interesting to me how many of these men in John's life were gay. And we've already touched on some of the like genital bashing that he does during the murders.
Yeah.
I'm not going to assign any sort of murder profile to any sort of sexuality, but I will say that I've profiled a number of gay men who were also serial killers, and the manner in which they tortured and killed their victims was like exactly the same as what John's doing.
Yeah, I mean, it is not like shocking to or stretch of the imagination to imagine that he hates his own sexuality, and so he takes it out on gay men that are like open and comfortable with themselves. Because Congress, look at the Senate or whatever. Like, I'm just saying that that's a pretty common.
It's a very common thing,
amongst homophobic people.
Yes, agreed. Yeah. So the next victim was one that was not accused in any way of pedophilia. It was a guy named Gavin Porter, who was friends with Jamie, because Jamie, who was, 17 or whatever, was a recovering heroin addict. Gavin was a not recovering heroin addict. So they were friends because of their drugs. For a while, they allowed Gavin to live with them. And at one point, he left a used needle on the couch, and John sat on it and got pricked by it. So Gavin had to go. Gavin was passed out, like nodding off in his car, and Robert and John went out and strangled him to death.
The excuses get weaker and weaker.
Yes, they do.
Too.
They then forced Jamie to help dispose of him, despite him being his friend, which was another way of John like exerting control over Jamie and making him, show that he's loyal. The next victim is Troy, who I mentioned earlier. That's Jamie's older half brother.
Oh.
And this happened because Jamie told John that just a couple of years prior, like right when John started hanging around, his older brother sexually assaulted him. And this was probably because both of these brothers, along with their younger brothers, were sexually assaulted by the man their mother had been seeing. And so he was just, parroting the behavior.
Yeah.
This goes down.
Awful. Yeah.
So John was enraged by this. And this murder was particularly brutal. He was beaten by John, Robert, and Jamie while he slept in his bed. He was then dragged into the bathtub in the family's home. They pulled out his toenails. They crushed his toes with pliers. They beat him. They forced him to apologize to Jamie. And then they strangled him to death while staring him in the face, watching him die. And that was something John really enjoyed, was looking into their faces, the faces of the people as they died, as the light went out.
God. Okay.
The next was Frederick Brooks. He's the one who helped with Michelle's murder by calling and saying he was Michelle. He was also accused of being a pedophile. He was also tortured horrifically. In addition to the beating and toe crushing, they had now found a way to electrocute their genitals with like a battery hookup. So this was like the new thing they started doing. Frederick was also burnt with cigarettes and a lighter, but he was first made to record his voice to help cover up his murder. They did this with quite a few victims. I believe they made Barry call their mother and say that they were moving and did not contact them. Like, I hate you to never talk to me again.
Right.
But also that was so they could keep cashing his checks. The next one was Gary O'Dwyer. He was 29 years old. He was on a pension as he suffered a brain injury in a car accident. He was tortured in the same way as Troy, called a pedophile. I don't think he was. I think they just wanted to kill somebody. So they were like, yep.
Again, they're just trying to torture any way they can.
Anybody, yeah.
Yeah.
The next victim is Elizabeth Hayden, who is engaged to Mark Hayden, who is helping them cover up the murders. She started to find out what was going on. And so they're like, oh, you know too much. I don't know that she was tortured, but she was put in a barrel along with the rest of them.
Okay.
So as you can guess at this point, the cops are starting to kind of catch on. Like there's a whole lot of people just like no longer around, but who are getting their checks cashed, right? And they may not care about the murder of poor people, but they sure as hell care about money being stolen from the government.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, they start digging around. They're kind of like on the periphery, but they haven't figured anything out. Elizabeth's murder was what did the group in. Because while nobody else was reported missing, her brother reported her missing like 48 hours after she was gone. So the cops started tracing back because they're already like something weird's going on around here.
Yeah.
So now they're like, we have somebody who's actually reported missing. Let's look into this. They start tracing it back. They find Mark. They're like, this is weird. Mark is renting an abandoned bank vault in Adelaide or in Snowtown. He has no business in Snowtown. Like, why the fuck would he be there? And so eventually, like, she was murdered, I think, in like April or early May of 1999. And the cops raided the bank vault on May 20th. So pretty close. They tracked her credit card usage and found that it was John and his people using her credit cards. Unfortunately, before they were able to stop them, these guys claimed their last victim. And if it wasn't bad enough that they killed Jamie's half-brother, they are now also killing his former step-brother.
Oh my God.
This guy wasn't gay, was not a pedophile, but they always called him the F word, you know?
Yeah,
And-
again, they're just jumping through hoops to be like, well, this case is really interesting in a way because it's like, this is just a Ted Bundy type character, except that he needs to feel like for every murder, he has some like self-righteous justification. Like,
exactly. And they do say he's like the worst serial killer in Australian history. I think Robert Wagner doesn't get enough like credit as also a terrible serial killer.
As a partner in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in any case, these guys are fucking going wild. So they killed David Johnson. He's 24 years old. And they went so wild that while Robert and Jamie went to the bank to try to get David's money, which he gave them bad information, which also tipped the cops off, John finished torture murdering him. So when Robert and Jamie got back, Robert was upset that he didn't get to, quote, play with him more, like torture him more.
Yeah.
So they're like, how can we make you feel better? Let's cut pieces of his body off, fry them up, and eat them. And so they did.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Right.
I don't even want to think about what could have happened, like if they had not been caught, because now we're skewing into like torture murders, cannibalism. They're just killing anybody they know. It's just people they know. They're like, who's the next easy like target?
Yeah, who's a person?
Yeah,
you know,
that we know.
like,
Let's get them. You know.
yeah, and it's also like in a way easier to get people they know because they can lure them out
Exactly.
or they can like
Exactly.
be around them. You know,
Yeah.
they're not willing to abduct strangers yet, but they might have if they had kept
Oh,
going.
I think for sure. And the other thing is,
Yeah.
John, like I said, he's charismatic. He's also just controlling all these people. Everybody who died and everybody involved knew what was going on. And it went on for years. I mean, they got caught in 1999 and the first person they killed was in 1992. But between 95 and 99, they killed 11 more fucking people.
And there's definitely like a tacit, quiet homophobia also.
Big
Let's like
time.
letting this continue happening.
Oh, it's not even
like
tacit. Like this was
Right.
like they like got together and like talked
tacit at
about how much.
best.
Yeah, like they would like get together in group meetings and talk about how much they hate gay people and like pedophiles
Yeah.
and like again
and people
conflating
were
them.
clearly buying into John's bullshit about how these are all justified.
Yes, so he was like seen as a hero in this group, and it's
Yeah, it's
disgusting.
like almost cult leadery.
But it's also like who's
Yeah.
left in the group? Like you've literally killed everyone, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's insane. So the men are all arrested. And it's super funny because John's a fucking idiot. He used the wrong kind of acid in the barrels. He used like hydrochloric acid, I think, which basically like preserved the bodies instead of
Oh my
dissolving them. He
God.
thought they were going to dissolve, but he used the wrong acid. So they were super easy not only to identify, but to figure out like how they died. John was given 11 life sentences, never to be released. He bragged loudly about what he did. He again considered himself a hero, considered himself, taking out the trash. Robert, his lackey, was given 10 life sentences consecutive, never to be released. Jamie, who obviously was very young, was a victim of massive amounts of abuse. Also, basically came out and testified against John and Robert, saying that he was like terrified and abused into doing what he was supposed to do, or what they wanted him to do. was still given 26 years minimum because he did actively murder multiple
Right.
people. And he did, eat someone. So,
Sure. I
You
mean,
know.
at least it's less, though, because of who
Yes.
he was to begin
Yes.
with and being vulnerable.
yeah. And then Mark Hayden, Elizabeth's fiance or husband or whatever, was accused, but nothing stuck because
Okay.
all they could say is he rented the bank vault, but they couldn't prove that he knew what John was doing there.
Right.
They were just well, that's sus as fuck, but we can't prove anything. So basically that's the story. I hope it was clear. It's it's just 25 people all murdering.
I followed it. I
Oh.
was with you.
Okay, good. So the movie I want to talk about, I couldn't finish the movie. And I got to the end, but I skipped half of it because it's one of those movies, okay, a straight horror film I can get with. This movie, okay, first of all, it's excellent. I'll say that. It's really dark and dank and moody, and it makes you feel it feels gross. It feels poor, and it feels gross, and it feels claustrophobic, and it
Captures
feels
the essence.
it
Perhaps.
really does.
Yeah.
And the people acting in it are amazing. But it's so real that I couldn't watch it. A horror movie that's not real or that's just over the top violent is way easier for me to watch than one.
You need more fantasy, more.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was
ridiculousness.
too real. That being said, it was really great. But even they started with a middle murder. They didn't even try to
They don't go through all of them.
No.
Yeah.
And they didn't discuss John. And they even actually, it's funny because they kind of did them in an order that would have made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm that's really funny that they reordered his murders to make the story less convoluted.
Yeah.
It's an Australian movie. It won a ton of awards. It's really fantastic. It came out in 2011. If anybody has the stomach for it, watch it. But it's graphic scenes of rape, graphic scenes of torture and murder, but where it makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
You feel emotionally
Honestly, that sounds a
bad.
little advanced even for me, especially because you told me there's animal violence on animals too, which not to sound like a ghoul,
Yes.
I'm violence with people is fine, but I think everyone can sympathize with this
absolutely.
position that's extra
Yes.
hard.
It is. So yeah, that's kind of, I recommend it, but only if you have the strongest of stomachs and minds, because it fucked me up.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
just too dark. It's too dark.
Q 15 minutes later, I'm playing the Snowtown.
Yeah. Well, let me know if you watch it. Let me know what you think.
Okay.
It's not, like I said, it's not a straight horror. It's a slow movie, but it's really good. It's a too gnarly for Criterion, but that style.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like I talked forever, so we'll
No,
wrap
that was
this
great.
up. Okay, good.
Also, I wanted to say that the bank vault is 100% still there. It looks exactly like it did.
Yeah, I know. They just
and I'm going to
removed
put
the
it
barrels
on the murder map. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, and I should mention that David was the only one who was actually killed in Snowtown. They lured him out to the bank and killed him there.
Yeah,
so
but
that
the
was
barrels were in
all
Snowtown.
there. Yeah, and that's why it's called Snowtown Murders.
Got it.
And they even considered changing the name of the town because it's already such a fucked up place, and the people who live there are seriously, could you not shit on us more? So anyway, yeah, so those are, you might want to add his address too. I'll give it to you again. It's 203 Waterloo, I think. I'll send it.
I already got it.
Oh, you got it. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm on top of you.
Anyway, hopefully that was easy to follow and interesting for everybody. We'll be back in a couple days with the next half of these.
Mm-hmm.
And until then,
stay
off our
Bye.
stay off them.